Hello everyone and back to the action we come. It's the second session of the first semi-final. It's Yize against Xintong and it's 4 frames each out there. Apologies for a little bit of a delay. The table was very slow for me to actually load there, so haven't missed any of the action in terms of any of the points there for the players, but ultimately had a couple of chances there for Xintong previously, and he's just gone for one more chance there of heading towards the right corner. But if he managed to get away with the first couple, he's not going to get away with this one, because he's going to be back to the turn there for Yize, and he's certainly going to be able to knock this red in. Anything on top of that, of course, is going to be for a bonus there for him, as only has 2 reds that are available to his name, but we'll be looking to try and re-establish that point. As once again there, he tries to put himself back in the equation there for the dominant performance right now in the second session, after he had a nice little cushion there at the start of the first one by leading by 4 frames to 2 out there, with him taking 3 frames of the bounce. But Xintong managed to respond there, taking 2 of the frames of the bounce himself out there. And now we go in towards the second session with the scoreline being 4 frames each out there. Once again, as I say, 8 points right now for Yize, so the next couple of shots are going to be very important here for him. So he clearly decides to go against there, trying to spread the reds out from the red itself, which probably has to be the sensible point for him to go now. So gets himself lined up with a bit of angle on the blue ball to try and rattle that one in towards the right middle. Is he going to be able to get on the red from this one? Play the shot nicely, and I think he's going to be unlucky with this one. I think the pink has absorbed all the power there, even though sometimes and usually it's actually the way for you to try and play the shot, trying to get the pink in towards the reds. But I think because of their amount out there and because of their positioning, he's going to have to go for a safety shot out there. So I think he was doing everything alright out there, and in the end just couldn't quite make it stick there for himself. But 14 points, still not going to be too little there for him. At least it's better than, leave the red out like Xintong did previously, and now has to try and bring himself back together. Has got a couple of reds available in towards the left corner out there, but ultimately I think he'll focus on trying to find a safety shot here, which, to be fair, from the shot that Yize has played previously, ain't going to be too easy of a task for him. I think the reds that I mentioned on towards the left corner actually going to have to be used in terms of him trying to get the cue ball down the table. Very risky there, because marginal. And he just about missed out the double kiss on the red there, once he was going towards the top part of the table. And now Yize has got a little bit of a chance there of his own. The red that, Xintong has missed out on previously is going to be available here for the Chinese world number 22 to try and take him towards the left middle. But ultimately, it's probably not going to be the shot for you to try and take on in the opening part of this matchup here. But maybe he's going to go for another option there to his name, and the red in towards the right middle is going to be another availability there. He's gone for it. Has he made it? Yes, he has. Brilliant shot there by Yize, and ultimately now has to try and make this break now, the one that counts for him. He's got the black available in towards the left corner, and of course blue and pink, all of them are not exactly perfectly positioned now in terms of where the cue ball was actually landed there for him. But obviously trying to make sure that had he missed the red, he wasn't going to give any invitation away to his opponent. So now trying to play the black in towards the left corner. And I think he'll be disappointed once again there. Although maybe he still can re-establish his position now in terms of him still being on the red. But just compromised himself massively there in terms of having to breach over 3 or 5 reds. Makes it pretty much a necessity there to go with a long spider out there. One of those which, of course, famously was criticised by Mark Cullen. I think it was the World Championship of a couple of years ago, where he was saying to Jan Haas that it doesn't look like it's straight there, until we found out that all of them were in the same shape. And just having a look to see whether he got the angle right. And of course, as I say, in playing for the black is going to be an extra challenge, which doesn't really need at this stage. An important shot now for him. He managed to get the red in, and how's the position on the collar? Needs the cue ball to slow down. I don't think it's going to be great, and I think it's going to be there at all. Maybe the yellow is actually going to be alright there for the cue ball, to be fair. And he does seem to storm towards the right-hand side of the table very quickly to try and take the yellow. So maybe it has worked out absolutely perfectly there for him, because if he gets himself onto the lower part of the table off this yellow, he's going to have a prime chance there of clinching this frame out there. But as we've seen before, nothing is guaranteed until you go over the line out there, because, you know, and both of these occasions, of course, it happened with Yize. One of them was when Zhao Xintong needed a snooker. He managed to get the snooker, but didn't quite manage to get the red in towards the left corner, and ultimately was still able to take that frame away from his Chinese compatriot. And in the end, there was one more frame, which of course was the deciding one, where Wu was leading by 58 points with 83, I should say, on the table. And Zhao Xintong, the reigning world champion, was able to take that chance to full extent and produce a clearance of 72 points, which made sure that he led the charge there for the draw going into the mid-session break. But right now, it is Yize trying to lead the front running field now for himself and trying to get this red in towards the right corner now. And as I say, you know, he still has some of the difficulty now ahead of him, but ultimately, the 3 reds that he managed to take in the current visit to the table are going to get him 26 points after this black, and ultimately he'll have 2 more reds there at least at his disposal. You could argue that he's going to have more than that when he frees up the red in towards the right corner, which he's going to try and attempt right now. Play the cue ball through the shot right there, and try and make sure if he gets a little bit of the touch on the red, he's not going to put it towards the pack there, and he's actually going to put it on the outside. So now the black to go 48 points clear, and once again out there, of course, you have to argue, and realistically you don't really have to argue, that Yize has been the better player so far. And you know, when I was saying that it was going to be Zhao Xintong to actually take the semi-final, I still think that he has to, you know, step up his game. I still think Yize could have had a better scoreline to actually present himself going into the second session, but ultimately, you know, it's all to play for, and the match basically turns into first to 5 out there. So something that you could actually have into, I don't know, one of the lower ranking tournaments of the semi-final stage. And right now, I mean, Wu clearly felt like he had to play that shot in towards the reds, and I still need to see the confirmation if he actually landed on one of those reds, because 56 points with 83 on the table, I mean, it basically has the previous frame written all over it there, because he had 58 points advantage. I mean, as I say, didn't have to play for that red just yet. And, you know, he had one more extra red on the top of the table. Didn't want to play for that one. And now looks like he'll have to take a difficult cut there in towards the middle. Ultimately, it has to play that way, that he's going to get himself a position on the black there to not run himself out of position. But also has to make sure he's going to drop the red in. Otherwise, he's going to be in deep trouble. And it could be potential deja vu out there. And it could be potential deja vu because he missed the red there. And an absolute carbon copy of the previous frame out there. The last one of the first session. And what about this for a twist? I mean, there was a shot out there on the channel about the clearance from Zhao Xintong, arguably from a more difficult position than this. Let's see if he's going to get himself on the score sheet at least now with the red in towards the left middle. Yes, he can. And yes, he is going to do that. And now we're having the blue in towards the right middle, which ultimately going to have the right angle, but the red that Yize has missed previously and the one that he refused to play for are all going to be on the top part of the table, waiting for Zhao Xintong. And all of a sudden, a straightforward clearance, which you could argue was more than straightforward out there. It was simple for Yize to try and take. His impatience and just trying to play for too many reds there at that time, and going for the red in towards the right middle, where he could have played a safety out there. You know, put one of those reds on towards the cushion. In the end, it looks like there's going to be at least a chance here for Zhao Xintong. Whether it's going to be a chance taken, we're yet to find out. And of the 5 reds that he's got at his disposal, he's got one of those quite close towards the cushion. And ultimately, that's going to be the main sort of point of attention there for him. Now he's going to get himself on the black here. So maybe just a nice little invitation to try and get that red into play. I think there was an attempt there for him, but ultimately couldn't quite make that work. And yeah, I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of the position now on the red. Ultimately, still think he has to take this one on, but, can't really afford to be having any more of those mistakes. Having looked to see if there's a plan there in towards the right corner, but, it has to be absolutely perfect for a plant because there is a significant amount of distance in between those two reds. And you could criticize the impatience of Yize out there, but ultimately, you're going to criticize of the impatience of Zhao Xintong right now because they don't have to go for trying to free up that red just yet. And right now, he is going to go for this plant. He is going to make it, though. So it was another half problem there that he's managed to solve right now because both of those reds were blocking each other in towards the left corner. And right now, he's going to have to focus on trying to take those easy 3 reds after he makes the black. If, of course, he makes it and just about drops in. He judged the pace absolutely perfectly there. I think the majority of the fans of Zhao Xintong would have been on the edge of their seat. Could have actually played for the red along the cushion, but still think he'll fancy his chances of trying to bring that one into play and make it a lot more appealing there to himself. Once again there, has got a 9 go on the black there. If he wants to take this shot on, he can always try and be Yize's guest there because I think, from the world number 22, that's going to be his best hope there of Zhao Xintong making a mistake. And once again there, he has to go for the rest, which hasn't been his strongest point so far in this match. I think he has 2 rest shots that he managed to pot, and one of them, which of course he missed after managing to land a snooker there on Yize, despite having 3 reds in open play out there for the world champion. Right now has to push the cue ball through the shot out there and maybe use 2 cushions to his extent and his advantage to try and get himself on the black. Try to do it with 1 cushion, and ultimately we're entering this stage of the frame where you have to say it's go harder, go home time for Zhao Xintong because right now he's very straight on this black, so the minor angle that he's got clearly is going to be a chance there for him to try and play the cue ball in towards that red and hopefully land it in towards the middle pocket. Not quite the middle pocket, but still marginally fine for the shot taken in towards the middle, in towards the right corner. He's not going to play a safety shot, but you just have to feel like you probably should play a safety shot from here because it's going to be a difficult shot there. Kevin, high close semi. Yes, it is. And it's a wonderful semi-final to actually see. Let's see if he's going to get even closer right now. It is going to get a lot better, though, for Zhao Xintong if he gets himself on the black. Just about does. And ultimately, as you can see, Kevin, you're finally joined the members club there. So, you got at least one of them after, 3 months, 3 attempts. Finally, you got yourself one of those. And, Zhao Xintong needs one more perfect shot out there to get himself in behind the red, either for the right middle or the right corner. Happy thanks. No worries, as I say, it was only a little bit of jokes. 10 points behind in Yize's favour for now, but basically it's a shot that is going to defy this frame. There has been a couple of those. The red in towards the right corner, and Zhao Xintong was walking towards the next colour before that red even disappeared in towards the right corner. And as I was saying previously, barring those 6 shots or so, it is going to be an absolute carbon copy of the 8th frame there. And you literally can make a topic out of it, sort of find 10 differences in between frame number 7 and frame number 8, because literally Yize had a gap of 58 points in frame number 8 out there and 83 points on the table. That time, Zhao Xintong produced a brilliant break of 72 points to get himself another frame on the board and ultimately close that gap down. Instead of going 5-3 down, he managed to take it into a 4-all draw. Not play the shot as well as he could have, though, on the green. So has to take a couple of more shots on the rest. And surely the last little issue for him is going to be the brown on towards the blue. But you could see that one coming. And I did say it hasn't played the shot as well as he could have. And Yize will be absolutely sprinting on towards the table out there. It was only a matter of time, Zhao, to improve this season. Not the best timing, but I get what you're saying out there. Certainly, I think it was just all about him enjoying those long-term matches a bit more there to himself. And now, nothing to separate the 2 players. And ultimately, Yize has got a perfect chance now to at least recover one of those frames. It's going to be 4 points clear right now. and try and aim this blue towards the left middle. Of course, he's going to need the pink after this one as well. And let's see if he's going to be able to shut all the pace down of the cue ball. And perfect shot out there. So once again, the pink to make it 5-4 lead there for Yize. After all sorts of drama, it is going to be the world number 22 there that is actually going to take it. And now we're going to have a 5-4 lead there for Yize as he manages to avoid that streak of 3 losses in a row there in terms of frames. And Zhao Xintong will only have himself to break. He had the brown there from the rest. All he had to do was adjust himself on towards the blue and pot the pink. Ultimately, Mr. Brownie towards the green pocket, and now it is Yize back in control of the match as he now leads Zhao Xintong by 5 frames to 4. Unusual to have such long semi-frames time, but agreed. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I'm going to be unpopular. I absolutely love it, and I'm going to tell you why, because the way this semi-final thing works out in the International Championship is going to have one of them on Friday, then it's going to have the second one on Saturday. And the way it works is you're going to have 8 frames in the first session on a Friday and Saturday, and then you're going to have evening session in China. For us, it's more like afternoon session in Europe. It's going to be another 8 frames. So I just think it's a lot better. And also, I just think if you talk about the sort of UK Championship, the Masters or something, I think it's a bit weird when you go into the first round of qualifiers at the UK Championship and you play first to 6. But when you get to the semi-final of the UK Championship, after, I don't know, 10 matches that you have to win, you still play first to 6. So I'm actually a great fan of it being first to 9 frames. I just think it's very nice when they manage to spread it out across 2 days. In the end, they had it a bit hectic in the last 64 and last 32. But as I say, I think it's all worth it for the fans and for the players when you're down to a single tamer format. I just think it's more enjoyable for me. And yes, I love the longer. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The longer the better in terms of the frames participated there for me. And of course, you don't want to take it to an extreme level where you're going to have players absolutely exhausted. But I think we're far from that with them having a couple of weeks in between. Of course, Zhao Xintong is going to go for the Champion of Champions and Riyadh season after this one until he'll be challenging for a potential UK Championship number 2 out there and his 3rd Triple Crown win of his career. And well, potentially you could have Yize as an underdog for that format, especially with him defeating the world number 1 Barry Hawkins and challenging the world champion right now. Yes, old world champion, best of 135. But yeah, I mean, bit much, like marginal, but I think it's a bit much. As I said previously, I thought he was like played over a month or something. Right then, let's get back to the action. Yize steps to the table and I mean, I was going to say it's a decent break-off. I wouldn't really say that now because Yize needs the green to come to his rescue. Otherwise, it's going to be Zhao Xintong's show for the beginning of this 10th frame. And it looks like it is going to be his show now. It's a horrible break there by Yize. It's the first real error that we've seen of any of those 10 frames from either one of the players. But ultimately, it's going to be the one that puts Zhao Xintong right back in this match. And right back in the hunt for a frame now. Similar position to the one that Yize had to face in the previous frame, with him having 3 reds available. If he gets the cue ball down the table here, and, well, tries to re-establish his position on the brown there, which of course is going to be a bit of a nervy little colour there for him, especially after him missed that one for basically the frame win on the previous occasion. And ultimately, as you would expect there from Zhao Xintong's character, I think you will put that past him very quickly indeed. And try and focus on what's in front of him there. Because what happened in the past has to stay in the past and you can't change it. Has to be the mentality of the world champion. And any big breaks so far? I mean, what I can tell you is the first frame had Zhao Xintong 82 out there. And the 4th frame, which was right before the intermission, had a 140 century from Yize there. So it was one of the highest that I think we've seen in the entire tournament. I mentioned that. For me, from what I've seen, it has to be the 3rd highest. By Yulu, obviously, having a break of 145 points. And then you've got a maximum break of Zach Doherty against Aaron Hill of 147 points previously. But Zhao ain't going to be one happy Chinese player right now because he's landed very straight on his black. Had to be with a lot of the angle there to make sure that he was going to get the reds separated there. But in the end, very rarely you see Zhao Xintong sort of commit to the fact that he's going to run himself out of position out there. And in the end, just going to play the safety shot of the Reds. 140 from Whoop. Yep. Just saying thank you. 140 cool. Yes, so on top of that, I'm going to say that there were breaks of Yize's point of view. I think there was a break of 72 points, 65 points from Zhao Xintong, because what he basically managed to do is when Wu was having like 50 or 40 points to his name, sometimes Zhao would just go on an amazing clearance out there, like he did in the last frame, where he managed to produce a 72 break of a points. And in the end, like, Wu was just not necessarily closing off the frames out there in the fashion that you would expect him to do in the semi-final stage. And I just think he was making a bit more of a rush decisions out there, and not really being too clinical there, which has been the case with him so far throughout the majority of the tournament, which is of course the way that he's actually managed to land himself on the semi-final battle. But this time around, it was a little bit of a long shot battle, and Yize has missed his chance. Zhao Xintong has managed to take his, and ultimately now, even though he's going to run himself out of position, I mean, if he gets a nice little comfortable snooker in behind the brown, he is going to put Yize into all sorts of trouble out there. Has to take all of the pace out of the red, but I don't of the cue ball, but I don't think he's managed to do it well. Yeah, had a chance out there, because that would have been a frame breaker out there realistically, because there was literally no reds close to the cushions or in a safe zone for Yize to try and roll up the cue ball up towards. And even though he's going to take a lot of time on the shot, he will be absolutely delighted with the fact that he can see the left-hand side of the reds, although still has to get a very thin touch on those if he wants to get the cue ball onto the top part of the table, which is going to be the prime target there for him. Let me just double check. So for Kevin's request, because it actually got me thinking. And yeah, so 450 plus breaks from Zhao Xintong, yet to see a century break, and 350 plus breaks from Yize. Wow, I mean, what on earth? What has he done there? What a brilliant shot that is. I mean, I certainly didn't expect that one. I mean, I thought he was looking for a safety play, but he's managed to find an absolute worldie of a shot in towards the left corner. By far the shot of the match then. Let's see if he's going to get him into a much anticipated break there out of himself. Right now, gets the yellow in towards his own pocket out there. And I mean, the brilliance of the shot is he's managed to get himself quite nicely on towards the ball colours as well, which was far from easy. And of course, you can understand now why he was taking so much time to actually go for the shot. He clearly didn't fancy going for a safety play out there. But in the end, what a safety. And I mean, forget about safety. If you're going to have shots like that, you don't really need a safety play at all. Just ask Jack Lisowski in his campaign at the International Championship at the Northern Ireland Open a couple of weeks ago. What a perfect chance this is now for Yize. And of course, this is when his character, his bottle, whatever you want to call it, is going to be tested right now. Because Zhao Xintong had a couple of those chances earlier, and barring the previous frame, he's managed to take majority of them. And right now, it is now down to Yize. I mean, like, he's got these 8 reds there in the position that you couldn't actually dream about going into this break then, but it's about as nice of an opportunity that you're ever going to get there as a player. He has to make sure right now that it's going to be there for the taking for him. And roll the red in towards the right corner right now, and has to try and eliminate a couple of more of those in towards the left corner, of course. And Wu played well under pressure. Once again, very rarely, but I will disagree on this one, because apart from, realistically, I wouldn't even call the last frame that he's played well under pressure. I think he struggled under pressure. I just don't think Zhao Xintong hasn't been able to put him under pressure. Be honest with you, as simple as that. I just think he didn't really have to. I'll give him a compliment in that, because he was so good without playing the pressure, and when he had those chances, more often than not, he would actually utilize them. But, you know, I thought whenever there was a little bit of pressure from Zhao Xintong in the start of the match, and I thought Wu actually crumbled under it, but he was able to reestablish himself, and you know, you can't say he's not playing well, or he's, you know, even though I am saying that he's not necessarily playing well under pressure, but he doesn't have to play a lot better than he is currently if he is going to have a 6-4 frame advantage there to his name. Because especially when you reach the semi-final and the business end of the tournament, you don't have to be playing well. You just have to be winning those frames out there. And so far, that's exactly what the man from China is currently managing to produce. And by the way, he's had a couple of difficult blacks there that he managed to rattle in towards the left corner. Gets himself on the red shot right now. So just try and roll the red in towards the left corner and get the cue ball lined up from behind the black out there and get around it. Play the shot in the way that he was very close to catching the black, which would have been a disaster. But in the end, gets himself a perfect angle right now. And yeah, it's one of those perfect practice positions that you got ahead of himself, because basically he has got so many reds in towards the left and right corner. And he can just try and make sure that he plays one of them into the left, the other one into the right. And that way, he's going to have all of those 4 reds now that are currently available on the table. Pots without any sort of hesitation or struggle there for himself. 22 points clear. Makes that 29 with a black. And yeah, the good thing is, of course, it's only been half an hour. And it looks like already we're going to go 2 frames for Yize to get himself under his belt. So even though, you know, you could actually think that 3 hours for the first stream was a bit lengthy there for 8 frames. Will coming to flourish in his snooker player. Well, as I say, it does remind you to an extent of that brilliant campaign that he had at the English Open, where he managed to come up against Neil Robertson. Because he had a lot easier opposition at that time. Didn't have to go through the world #1, Barry Hawkins, or the current world champion. Of course, one of the idols that his country have now got. And potentially, you know, it's very unlikely for the Chinese player to be sort of supported against there, if I might say it. But, you know, when you've got the world champion from China, the first ever in the history of the Chinese sports of snooker, it is going to be a bit of a hostile crowd, you would think, there, to an extent, from fans. But, of course, there's going to be a lot of them that are actually going to be supportive of Yize out there. And, I mean, he's managed to get the frame ball without real trouble there for himself. And the break of 75 points and counting. Zhao Xintong seems to be yawning in his chair. So, certainly not too worried out there, but you might start to get worried right now, because 6-4 so late into the semi-final might yawn your way out of the tournament. And of course, that just comes to say, if he wins the last frame, all of a sudden it's 5 frames each. But 6-4 so late into the tournament, of course, and the match is going to be quite a difficult way for him to navigate his way through. Pop your player, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm only messing with you anyway. You're not going to have a Chinese player being booed by the Chinese crowd. That would be sort of boundary on idiotic out there. But we certainly, you know, you talk about the big breaks. We certainly could have a century on the board if he manages to produce a total clearance from here. You know, gets himself on 4 colours. And, of course, that will be on top of the break of 22 where he managed to wrap off the 9th frame out there. Now he's about to take it a step further and put a second century on the semi-final, because both of them will come from the same player. And the break of the opening frame out there from Zhao Xintong is still going to remain his highest one that he managed to produce so far in this encounter. And, needs the pink here to make sure that it is going to be a century break. So goes for the rest shot, and lovely little shot on the pink. So 101 points. Big final for if he can get that. Well, as I say, still has got 3 massive frames ahead of himself, but he's doing well. He's doing really, really well there, and a brilliant campaign. I think he'll be really unfortunate at this stage, you have to say, if he doesn't end up in the final. But Zhao Xintong clearly doesn't seem to be two-faced about it. I wonder if he actually knows the word pressure, and if there is a word pressure in the Chinese language, because I certainly don't think there is a word of pressure in the vocabulary and the knowledge of Zhao Xintong. It just doesn't seem to care at all about business. But has to step up his game right now, because pressure or not pressure, you can't win the frames if you're losing them. Captain Obvious. And right now he has to go on a minor streak of his own now, because for every frame that he wins right now, Yize can try and respond with winning it himself a frame and keep that 2-frame cushion, which is ultimately, inevitably going to get him over the line out there against Zhao Xintong, if, of course, he manages to win a frame for every single time that Xintong manages to take a frame himself out there. But ultimately, 2 quick frames out there, just over half an hour. And lovely little stuff there in between the 2 players. once again, you just have to go back to that 9th frame, I would say, because the clearance was on there for Zhao Xintong, and it was a straightforward 6-color clearance out there. He landed perfectly on the green. He had a little bit of a rest shot out there, but still just underplayed for the brown slightly, and in the end, that cost him a momentum going into the 10th frame, but ultimately, of course, he has cost him frame number 9 as well. Right now, he has to level things up out there, because if he goes 5 frames to 6 out there and he loses one more, 5-7, this could just about be too much for him to try and recover. But that's, of course, when the pressure can be applied there to Yize. Let's see if that's going to be the case, though. All to play for, especially in the next couple of frames out there. And, of course, the player that is actually going to be behind is going to be under more pressure, and therefore, it is all about Zhao Xintong trying to respond there to the brilliance of Yize. And right now, Zhao Xintong is still winning there by 51% to 49, so very much touch and go out there. And of course, remember, the first session is finished with 4 frames each out there, which only 6 people actually predicted the draw. Excluding myself, of course, I didn't do that either. I thought Zhao was going to win the opening session 5 frames to 3. It was only 1 frame short. But my prediction of him winning this match by 9 frames to 7 doesn't look like it's actually going to happen either. Let's see now. If it is going to happen, he has to make sure he gets himself into a better shape than so far what we've seen of him in the second session up to these points. Nice little break-off shot though. And remember, by the way, talking about break-offs, it was a massive chance out there for Zhao Xintong after a huge mistake there on the break from Yize, which left a chance there in towards the left middle from Zhao Xintong, which he did manage to take on, but ultimately only managed to produce 21 points at that time of asking. Comes back to the table right now after a safety from Yize, gets the cue ball onto the lower part of the table. And Zhao can try and aim the white in behind the brown out there. Nice little attempt there. Managed to cover up the left-hand side of the table, but ultimately not the right-hand side. Still not going to take this red on there in towards the right corner with Yize, simply for the reason of the cue ball not going anywhere to land itself on the colour. And I mean, this is better in terms of the invitation for Zhao Xintong to go for the red in towards the left corner, but a little bit of a kiss on towards is the venue full, please. I didn't really want to go into that topic, I'll be honest with you, Kevin, because when I started to do the second session, I thought I got the time wrong, because the capacity does seem like it's actually very impressive, but from what I can see on the main stand, there's about 20 people on there, so I've got no idea why, but I told you what I've seen, and there's very, very little audience there from the main stand, as you know. I can only tell you what I see on the main screen, but I don't know what's happening on the sides out there, but I mean, all I'll tell you is Sanderson Lam against RonnieOSullivan, that was packed. That was absolutely packed. I think Zhao Xintong against Marcus Selby, that was packed. I've got no idea why, but maybe there's an explanation for it. Maybe because it's a single table, to be fair. They managed to squeeze more crowd on towards the left and right hand side. Okay, thanks. Well, as I say, it's awaiting verification is what I would call it, but from what I've seen, that's as much as I can tell you. But another thing that I can tell you is Yize has just made another error there for himself and left the red basically absolutely over the right corner pocket. Pink is going to be available there for Zhao Xintong, and so is going to be the blue out there. The black is very close in towards the left corner, so it's going to mean the fact that it's actually going to be quite tricky there for him to get it from the first time of asking, but ultimately he takes the red nicely, gets himself lined up for the pink in towards the left middle, and one more chance there, but Zhao Xintong has got ahead of himself. Takes the pink really nicely there, had to play with power, but also had to play with conviction out there. Big frame for Zhao, massive frame. As I say, it always is going to be the bigger frame to whoever's losing and whoever's trying to cut that gap down to himself, but you just have to ask about maybe the little pressure is already coming into play for Yize, because even though he's managed to do really well in the previous frame, I do want to just say, and I'm not being a hater by any means, I actually quite like Yize. And I just think the position that he had and inherited there ahead of himself was a bit of a waste anyway if he hadn't converted that one. You know, the fact that he made a century break without realistically having to do anything with the cue ball in relation to the Reds probably says it all to me. But, you know, the break-off shot that he's played in frame number 9 and just a couple of safeties that he's played against Zhao Xintong right here as well could just be a bit of a sign there that Zhao Xintong is still actually, potentially, especially if he wins this frame, the favourite there for the final spot. Because the further it gets and the closer Zhao Xintong is actually going to get there to Yize, the more the second of the two Chinese players is actually going to struggle out there. But that's not the way to do it if you want to do it from Zhao Xintong. Because, you know, if you can say that Yize has managed to make his way through a nice little position, when you can't really say the same about Zhao Xintong now, because even though in the previous frame it was a closed off position, right now he's made the mess of a beauty of a position there to himself. And now, realistically, the only chance that he's got of going for the red is going to be the one in towards the yellow pocket. But as whoever won ranked tournament, as far as I'm aware, no. I think he had his only final was English Open against Neil Robertson. Lost that one 9-7. But I did, when I was checking it before his World Championship, and the other one is the UK Championship out there. So, I mean, when he wins, he doesn't seem to win the Gibraltar Open out there, with all the respect. Now, Yize once again there comes back to the table. And just having a little look to see if he's going to be able to cut that red in towards the left corner, or potentially just try and get the cue ball on towards the top part of the table. Depends on which is going to be the priority for him. Misses the green out there, which ain't going to be perfect scenario there for himself. And, well, Zhao Xintong can go for the red right now in towards the left corner. If he wants to commit to it, I think there is a gap going to be waiting there for him. In the end, as I say, probably not the right shot to go for. Even though there was a gap, if you make a mistake at this position, going to be punished there surely. But, you know, the fact that he's gone for that approach, had to make sure that he got the sort of cue ball comfortably down the bulk area. In the end, he caught the ping pretty much full ball out there. So lands the cue ball onto the top right part of the tee. And Yize can try and aim one more red there in towards the left corner, which is going to be exactly on the pink spot. And to get the cue ball into the safe zone, play the shot really nicely. And he knew he got that one in, because even before the cue ball was actually reached the end point and the red has disappeared in towards the pocket, he was already marching on to the next shot. And you just know when you've hit it too well, and you've hit it exactly as intended out there, you're going to actually achieve your perfect outcome. In the end, Yize refusing to go for a green in towards its own pocket out there and trying to snooker and put Zhao Xintong into all sorts of trouble out there. Let's see if he's going to be able to succeed at that. And Xintong having a look to see if he's going to be able to get the cue ball onto the safe zone, onto the lower part of the table. I think the way to go for him is going to be a two-cushion escape there. Off into the left corner of the table and try and get at least one of those reds from behind. Maybe you could argue that he's going to be a better option there for him to try and go off the right hand side instead, because the two reds that are actually positioned closer to the right corner pocket, and that's the way that Zhao Xintong is actually looking at right now, they're going to block off each other. So as long as you make sure to take any extra power off the cue ball, and you catch any of them realistically anywhere but from the top part of him, I just think he's going to push them on towards the minor part of the top table, and therefore going to have the cue ball lined up on towards the black ball cushion, which is going to make sure that Yize is not going to have anything available there to his name. But, you know, my thinking, of course, is very nice sitting on my chair and talking to you lot. I think it's going to be very different to actually try and execute that. But, of course, having all of those reds available for Yize to try and give away there to his opponent. And the fact that he's taken pretty much 2 minutes there for Zhao Xintong to find a way there for him to actually go for first attempt probably is a sign that it's going to be the only attempt that he's going to have out there as his chance. And, you can just see there with the sort of 11 reds still being in play, that 19 points advantage that Zhao Xintong has got to himself is going to mean absolutely nothing if he's going to give a chance away to Yize. And in the end, he's gone for the approach that I suggested there, but he's gone from the top part of it rather than the right-hand side. Decent effort, as I say. Let's see if Yize is going to take this position and going to try and do something about it. I think he won't, because apart from the red in towards the left middle, don't think it's going to take anything there for him as valuable as just trying to force Xintong into having one more attempt. Of course, no sort of free misroll is going to apply to this one. Don't think the referee got that one spot on. I think he was closer in towards the yellow there. And I think this is going to go against Xintong. I've seen that from the referee previously. Can't remember the match that it was. I think it was jump against someone. And yeah, this is going to cost him if he doesn't get it this time around, as I say, because the referee has got that cue ball nowhere near where it should have been. And in the end, I mean, he managed to get the red in. Has he left anything there for Yize to try and play? And I mean, this is where I was actually thinking about that one for a couple of days right now. You know, when Kevin, you actually mentioned the 3-miss rule out there. Not the 3-miss rule, sorry, the actual miss rule should actually be put back there. I was actually thinking about it. And the way to look at it is think, is the game going to improve if you take it out of the game? And ultimately, I think the answer has to be yes to that question, because you see, the first attempt was good enough there from Xintong, but it was referee's mistake anyway, and now Yize has got himself with a perfect red, by the way, in towards the yellow pocket, gets himself lined up on the pink, and probably will win the frame from here. So, yeah, it's just tricky there for you to actually find the perfect balance out there, but you still have to say that maybe there's some sort of question to be asked there about the miss rule. And certainly some questions have to be asked there. Yeah, big debate. Well, that's what I see. The first time you mentioned it, I thought, what are you on about? Absolutely, you should stay. But the more you think about it and the way you have to talk about it in debate, is the game better with the miss rule or without it? And as long as there's a genuine attempt there for the player to hit the ball, which is going to be judged by the referee, I mean, it wouldn't actually be that much of a difference. No, it would be much of a difference there for the player to actually have that genuine attempt. And if the referee feels like, okay, that was very close to hitting the red, and of course he genuinely tried to hit that one, he wasn't trying to play the cue ball into a safe area, then maybe the other player should just step to the table and try and take it from there. But as I say, I think I'll just try and watch more and more matches out there to see if that point is going to go, because the first time I actually thought about it was the match against Lisalski against O'Sullivan, where Lisalski snookered O'Sullivan, and Ronnie was super close there on getting the first time of asking there. He was a decider, and ultimately, having missed that red, he given an ultimate opportunity away there to Jack. So with my red-tinted glasses out there on O'Sullivan, I just thought, well, that was a bit unfair. And ultimately, that's when it all started there for me. But anyway, forget about that for a moment. It is Yize trying to be on the charge now for winning the third frame on the bounce. And ultimately, of course, he is technically the higher player there in terms of the draw, which is going to mean the fact that he had to go through the top side of it and beating the likes of John Barry Hawkins and Zhang Anda there in progress. In the end, if he's going to add the world champion to that number, it's going to be a mighty campaign there for him ahead of playing either John Higgins or Stephen Maguire out there. And of course, Wolf was the third favourite going into this match there to win the tournament, behind John Higgins as the second favourite. And of course, Xintong was their number one there in terms of the odds for him to become the winner of the International Championship. Well, it doesn't look like this right now though, because Stephen Maguire is going to be more favourite than Xintong, because he doesn't have to come away with 2.5 frames of a disadvantage there. It's once again, lovely little shot there for Wu as he manages to get around one more red there, get himself lined up on a shot in towards the right corner there with the pink. Gets a little bit of traction on the backspin there for the cue ball. Gets himself lined up for the left corner. Now 20 points away. Battle of Scots tomorrow, Battle of China. Yes, as I say, it was a Chinese derby today, and it still is, not quite was. And it's going to be the Scottish derby tomorrow out there. And just like it was in the British Open, where we had the Scottish derby of Anthony McGill against John Higgins. Then we had Sean Murphy against Mark Selby, I think it was, in the other semi-final. In the end, it was Murphy against McGill, and the Englishman managed to take it with a win over 10 frames to 7 out there. But Yize does seem to run away with this one, certainly with the frame, and you know, you just have to ask that question from Zhao Xintong. I mean, I say you have to ask the question of Zhao Xintong, but it was a really good first effort, and in the end, I mean, I'm not too sure what he actually can do from his point of view, because, as I say, it's just one of those things out there. You know, your opponent gets a brilliant long shot, he decides to go against the risky pot of the green, and in the end, it looks to be the decision that is actually going to get him the win in this frame out there, barring the next couple of reds, as he's about to go 30 points clear. We're taking the blue or the pink. 2 more reds and colours and game. Yep, exactly. That's what I was going to say out there. Don't think he's going to need... yeah, basically, yeah. He's going to need 2 colours and 2 reds out there. Because if he just takes himself having 43 points left out on the table, he's not going to have a colour after the second of those reds. Now 34 points clear. The next red is going to take it 35. And yeah, ultimately might need an extra colour after this one, to be fair. So maybe 4 shots needed. And certainly to make sure that Xintong's not going to come back to the table and battle for this one. And we did say it was a massive frame out there. But, you know, that thing that, well, Yize hasn't really been put under pressure can't really apply out there when Zhao Xintong had 2 chances in the last 2 frames. First one was a break of 21 points. And right now it was a break of 20 points. And Yize has managed to produce 50 plus breaks on each of those occasions. He just has to ask there some questions there for the world champion. You know, maybe he's back, maybe he's not back. We're going to see the grade of that in the next upcoming frames. Of course, it's very unfair to judge a player based on his performance in a single session, but you know, it's certainly the way, the fact if he's going to be in the final or not is going to be judged on the way the next 3 or 4 frames are actually going to finish there for him. Lovely little shot once again there by Wu. Yes, I think once more. Well, it's a horrible thing to say, by the way, because it's one of the worst sort of criticism points that you can give there to the champion. And as I say, barring Ronnie, he probably is my best and favourite player. I think Wu wants it more. I do, because as I say, you don't really see players yawning in their chair when their opponent is at the table. And, you know, that complacency, clear complacency area on the brown, where he was about to go 5-4 up out there. Instead, he's going to go 7-4 down. We're taking another red there, so 49 points is the advantage. And 35 is on the table right now there for him. He's on the road. GG's match. Wouldn't say John twisting the tail. Zhao has managed to come back from 4-2 down. So let's see if he's going to be able to stay alive there for a couple of more frames. But of course, it's now 3 frames on the bounce. And before the last intermission of this semi-final, you absolutely must win the next frame. Because if he comes into an equation of 8 frames to 4 out there, it certainly is going to be as much over as he can actually be out there. For now, Zhao Xintong survives, but by the skin of his teeth, it is now Yize 7, Zhao Xintong 4, going into frame number 12, which could prove to be the most important that we've seen in the semi-final up to this point. I would say all to play for, but it's all to play for Zhao Xintong right now, because he has to stay and get himself another chance out there. And once again, from this picture there, you can see you can actually count the people out there, and I think it's going to be way less than 30 out there, with pretty much maybe 6-tuple the amount of seats out there. So maybe if you say there's going to be like 150 seats, maybe 30 people in the main stand, which is about as much as you can see on the table camera. Must win frame for Zhao. But Kevin, I mean, the funny thing is about this one, me and you have said that since 9th frame when it was 5-4. Then we've seen 6-4 and we've said, oh yeah, it's an absolute must win now for Zhao. But now it's 7-4 and we still say it's a must win for Zhao. I think now we're entering that zone where it has to be a couple of frames must win for Zhao, or he's going to be down and out of this tournament. As I say, I was very surprised with his no sort of attitude. I know he's sort of immune to any sort of pressure, but his commitment has been questioned there by myself. And the way he's been sort of taking those chances and throwing those chances as well. The breaks of 20 points, 21 points. It's just not been good enough on the last couple of occasions. And of course, Yize has produced a break of 65 points in the previous frame. And all of a sudden, you know, he gets himself a break of 108 or 7 points it was for the previous frame on the Saint Shoe break. So, yeah, you have to ask some questions there of Zhao Xintong. But only he can answer those questions. And let's see if we're going to find the answer. Because 5-7 is still marginally... It's going to be all right there for at least a couple of more frames to try and battle. And as RonnieOSullivan likes to say, maybe go out on his own terms. But if he loses 4 frames on the bounce, it may actually be only the second time that I've seen Zhao Xintong lose 4 frames on the bounce in the sort of recent history. I know he's managed to do it against Jordan Brown. But I suppose on the other hand, if you talk about it with the way... And with the tournaments that they've had so far, you're not really going to play so many frames that you're going to lose 4 of them on the bounce. So let's see now. Maybe against Mark Williams as well. In the final of the World Championship last year. When he was entering the endgame phase. Now he's entering endgame phase for the potential problems there for himself. As, you know, we are going to have the Chinese player in the final. But which one is it going to be? Remains to be seen. And right now, once again there, as he has been a little bit of a tendency throughout this match, there's a red left out in towards the left corner. And yeah, Zhao Xintong clearly tried to go for it. In the end, he's missed it. But, I mean, I wouldn't really criticize him for that shot because I don't think it was reckless. And weight of being world champion, too much for Zhao to bear. Peter probably will disagree once again there. I just don't think... I don't think it's that, because it all comes down to the mental thing and pressure. And I'll be honest with you, I think he's one of the strongest players on tour when it comes to that point. I just think he's yet to find a bit of focus there on his game, and he needs to concentrate a bit more. Attitude is better. Attitude is better. Attitude is better. I think the way he comes onto these matches, there's a fine line in between you not being scared of playing anyone, but also there's a fine line of you not being bothered when you turn up for those sort of business parts of the matches out there. And once again there, he goes for the red, which he misses by quite some margin out there. So the same red can be taken there by Yize. So I think the attitude and Yize actually wanting this match more probably reflects on the things. And you could actually see similarities out there with RonnieOSullivan. But as I say, Ronnie had the game and the part of his game where he could have actually switched off out there and still won sort of 6 or 7 frames on the bounce. Zhao Xintong wasn't able to do that so far this season. And even though Yize has managed to produce a brilliant breakout, a brilliant shot out there of a long shot in towards the left corner, he gets himself into a very tricky situation out there. And he's going to be smiling about this one. And yeah, he's certainly not going to be smiling inside of him because, I mean, it's about as close to impossible snooker as you're going to get out there. So I wonder if referee's going to call a miss here. Could be a little bit of a payback from the previous situation from Zhao Xintong trying to escape a snooker. And by the way, is there a mid-session break? Yes. So Kevin brought that message about half an hour ago, but because I was talking too much, he only actually realised it right now. And he's going to go for the pink now. So has to try and make sure that he catches it with minimal power. Ronnie loves winning, aren't we all? Aren't we all fans of winning? But when it comes to Ronnie, not only does he love winning, he does also win a lot. And, I mean, certainly throughout his career, not so much now, but there's certainly a reason for that, and there's not a single reason for it. Right now, Zhao Xintong just having a look to see if he's going to have a red available towards the right middle, which Yize clearly was happy to concede to his compatriot. Peter awarded for mid-session thank. Well, as I say, perfect timing. And, you know, if I kept on talking without answering your question, I could have had that delivered exactly for when the first frame of the sort of second part of the session would have finished, because especially with the way that those two have played. By the way, 11.5 frames, and this stream has been going on for, what, an hour? And the first one was 3 hours. 4 hours for 11 frames. If you take account the intermission, the little start of the stream, and the breaks in between the frames, is absolutely extraordinary out there. because very rarely you see 11 frames of when it's first 6 being played in so little time. So certainly entertainment for the fans provided now by the two players. Long time, nice, short time. Like, that's what I'm saying. 11 frames are super short time for 3.5 hours of pure table time out there. But, you know, that's actually why I actually prefer for it to be spread out onto 2 sessions and just have one semi-final take out the entire day out there, similar to the one they've got in Crucible. But of course, that one is going to be played at a different format because there's so many sessions to be played. You just can't really have one of those semi-finals played at the same time as the other. And etc, etc. So once again there, Yize just playing a nice little shot there of trying to roll the cue ball in towards the red and not leave Zhao Xintong with anything at all. He was having a look to see if there's a red that actually passes the blue in towards the green pocket, but that doesn't seem to be the case. So safety it is going to be once again out there for the Cyclone. But I suppose if you're being a bit kind to Zhao, you have to say sometimes it just can be one of those days where you're not playing well and you can't really do anything about it because, you know, talk about the previous frame. I think the previous frame was absolutely unforgivable, by the way, because you can say you weren't playing that well and he was unlucky in the sort of one prior to that where it wasn't unlucky, to be fair. He's just running himself too straight on the black and he didn't have any of the reds that were open or somewhat close to being open. But the previous one, when he had a perfect position and he tried to cannon the cue ball in towards one of those reds and he played the wrong part of it, therefore running himself out of position. And the next chance that he gave away to Yize was the one that lost him the frame. And once again out there, it's a horror shot there from Zhao Xintong because even though the line was there for the cue ball, just lacking the pace massively, and in the end it's going to be a chance for an opener for Yize into the left corner. Of course, he's not going to miss this one, but where's the cue ball going to finish? Don't think it's going to finish perfectly there for him. I think just about enough there for him to actually see blue in towards the right middle, but could have played the shot better because he's going to be the wrong side of the blue anyway. And also, he's got a long way for the cue ball to try and travel onto the lower part of the table right now. So he has to try and accelerate that one with all the power in the world, but also has to try and find a gap there in between the green and brown and play the shot really nicely, to be fair. Played it about as perfect as he could have. So, red available in towards the left middle now for him. Well, good power cue-wise. I mean, he's perfect, by the way. Some of the shots that he's played, Zhao didn't really pot those, but when Yize manages to pot the red there, I mean, 70-80% of a chance that he's actually going to have himself on the colour is super high there, just because of the way he strikes the cue and the white out there. He's going to put more effort into actually making sure that he's going to be on the next shot in the positional play. Then he's actually going to try and make sure that the pot is in, which technically you could argue is the wrong way for you to go. But, you know, it just depends on which side of the coin you actually go for. Because, you know, if he makes all of those long shots, which he's not made all of them today, but he's made majority of them, then you have to make sure you just got to have the positional play, because you can be like Zhao Xintong, that you could argue probably made more of those long shots than Yize today and in the tournament in general. But how many of those chances actually led him to sort of a single or maybe 7 points or so until he run himself out of position or gone for the red, which wasn't actually there for him. Which is why he's going to be such a favourite of the fan base, because he's got that beautiful positional sense. I thought I actually jinxed him perfectly, because he was just sending the cue ball from the blue in towards the left corner pocket. Who does will remind you of with all the player. I mean, I'll be honest with you, that's where my generation is going to be a bit against me. As I say, my generation is very much Stuart Bingham in sort of 2015 onwards, Ding Zhuowei, RonnieOSullivan, Mark Selby, Neil Robertson, John Higgins and Mark Williams out there. Maybe Graham Dott to an extent, but yeah, going to be really limited in those. Never seen Henju play in the official match until he came back from retirement in 2021 out there. A lovely little shot there, by the way, from Wood to try and recover himself on towards the ball colours. And hammers the green home. And what a line by the Cuba once again there. I mean, it turns into an absolute magician out there. And by the way, I mean, you can be harsh on Zhao Xintong, but another thing that you have to say, I will answer that question by the way. He has managed to extraordinarily dominate Jump, Barry Hawkins, and Zhao Xintong right now for parts of their matches. Of course, lost out 4-0 to Jump in the first mini session. Managed to win 6 frames on the bounce out there, making a 50+ break in every single one of them, and managed to take that form with him in towards the quarterfinal stage and produce a whitewash on Barry Hawkins of 6 frames to 0. So you can be harsh on Zhao Xintong. You can say he's not playing well, but you also have to give massive credit there to his opponent, which I actually think I've probably been too unfair to him, and I will do it now. He's been absolutely the man of the tournament so far by a stretch out there. Maybe John Higgins is going to be closing in on him tomorrow if he produces a similar sort of performance against Stephen Maguire, but I mean, at this stage, you'll be honest with you, with him being 7-4 and 31 points clear of Zhao Xintong, it's very unlikely that he will lose out on making the final spot. And does he deserve it? Boy, does he deserve it. I mean, is that the best performance in the season that we've seen, barring Jack Lisowski, for the campaign that he's had at the Belfast? Henry was ruthless. Well, absolutely, don't count Maguire out. He wants it. I mean, fair play by Maguire, by the way, because I was listening to his interview, and he gives himself absolutely no credit, and I really like people like that. They're really humble. He basically said that, he was asked by the interviewer, can you put your finger out on why you've been playing so well? And he says, no, I've got absolutely no clue. I still think last season at the Welsh Open I played better. As, by the way, I'm going to take a little pause now because it's an important shot now for Warriors to try and take. And he hasn't taken it. It was a well-timed pause, and it could be another chance now for Zhao Xintong. He was quick off his chair. Let's see if he's going to be able to produce some sort of answer now, because it is now the frame to win there for him, or to finally officially go home, you would think. Wait, with 8 frames to 4 being the gap that even he as the world champion won't be able to climb back. And yeah, takes the first red, but that's going to be the end of his chances. To be fair, it was always going to be a bit of a stretch out there for him to land on the colour. So the fact that he's taken the red out and he's going to have another chance to at least have one more safety battle with his opponent. Wake up, Zhao, go home. Yeah, well, it is. It has been yawning, to be fair. And one thing I will say, it's not going to be 6 o'clock in China for the morning session, and we're not even in the morning session anyway. So, whatever it is, probably he's just a bit bored with the fact that he hasn't been left too many of those chances. With one thing I will say though, every single time Yize gets himself a chance, barring those 2 times that he scored 58 and 56 points, and Zhao could have had a clearance on both of those occasions, I mean, he's been flawless. Just to say that, he leaves another red there for Zhao Xintong in towards the right corner, so maybe I just have to praise him and do it in between the frames. Go home it is by the looks of it. Well, let's see. It's never over until it's over. And especially from the bit of quality that Zhao Xintong can produce. That's one of his. Lovely little shot in towards the right corner. Gets himself lined up for the pink in towards the right middle. Not having too many reds that are going to be the issue. The yellow is, with it going exactly above his spot there and perfectly on towards the ball cushion. 2 boys playing Monday morning in Champ of Champion. If he wins, you'll have to be put back. So Higgins, yes. No. Don't think about it, Kevin. It's a provisional draw. Champion of Champions, the way that they've got a week allocated for it, you'll have last 16 being played over 3 days or something. Don't fool yourself that it's going to be played all at the same time. Because for now, I've seen the stats there. They're going to be scheduled to play at the same time. But this is an important red right now for Zhao Xintong. And he's missed it. And he could not have missed it with a worst possible outcome there for himself. Because once again there, Wu comes back to the table. And he's going to try and hammer red home. Lovely little piece of cueing yet again out there. I mean, what a shot that is. Looks simple, yet so effective out there from Yize, and certainly take a bow out there. I mean, if this player manages to find consistency, It could be the next Zhao Xintong, realistically. I mean, are we actually going to see players from China absolutely dominate the tour? Not quite yet out there, but they're closing in. You've got Si Xiaowei, Zhang Anda, Zhao Xintong all knocking on the door there of the top 10. Xiao Guodong, of course, has been there previously at the earlier stage of the season. Well, today you win. Well, hasn't won just yet, but as I said, it was always going to be about this frame. And it does look like he's actually going to take it in the perfect manner there for himself. And right now, gets another red in for himself. So, 51 points after this one. And gets himself off into the perfect start here. And lines himself up for the shot of the pink. Okay, yes, great player coming to surface. I mean, he certainly is. He certainly is. And by the way, I'm talking about Champion of Champions. There's some good matchups out there. I've seen Zhao Xintong against Mark Cullen, but probably might be just aiming towards doing the Jack Lisowski against Kyron Wilson out there, because I'm yet to see more of Kyron. I've seen clips of his loss to Maguire. Ultimately, doesn't sound that bad when you take into account that Maguire actually made it into the semi-finals right now. But yeah, he was quite lucky there not to be heading the distance. It was a 5-4 at that time, and Maguire basically gone for his standard hit a hope shot. By the way, Yize has managed to absolutely evaporate Zhao Xintong right now, and the 15 minutes intermission right now could be that little delay of the obvious and inevitable, because barring something no short of a sensation, and realistically needing to win 5 frames on the bounce out there, it is going to be Zhao Xintong eliminated from the International Championship, as Yize is going to have a break of 34 points, which certainly is going to do it there for him. And it is now the healthiest lead that you ever get there to yourself. It is Yize 8, Zhao Xintong 4. And what a contrast that is. The first frame of the second session could have been won by Zhao Xintong. He was 3 shots away from doing that. In the end, he lost all 4 of these frames of the first mini session. And Yize right now is only 1 frame away from making it into another ranking event final. If he's going to take him 1 frame, is he going to take him all 6 frames? Is he going to be Zhao Xintong with an ultimate comeback? We're yet to find out about it, but we'll be back with you at 5 minutes to whatever time you're watching it to, and 12:55 in the UK. In the end, let's see which way is he going to go there, but Zhao Xintong has got an almighty bounty to climb to try and get himself into the first ranking final of this season. Right then everyone, intermission is over, and could it be over for the entire tournament campaign? If you talk about Zhao Xintong, well, he's got a break-off shot. It could well be the last one that he's going to get in the International Championship of this year, because remember, of course, next frame, it's going to be the turn of his opponent, but are we going to get there to next frame, or is it going to be Yize with a comprehensive win out there with a scoreline of 9-4? We're yet to find out, but he certainly has been doing everything that he can to make sure that's going to be the case, with him losing 2 frames on the bounce there to change the scoreline from 4-2 to 4-all. And ever since, Zhao Xintong has gone on to a losing streak of 4 frames on the bounce out there for the first time since losing those 4 to Jordan Brown in the opening round of the Northern Ireland Open. Has to try and get himself back up together. And, well, I mean, if Yize managed to win 4 frames on the bounce, it certainly can be done there for a world champion. But the problem is, it's a very couple of very good points well made out there, and more improvement after sort of the best and the greatest of all time meant that certainly has improved him. But ultimately, I don't know how on earth I could manage to forget the fact that he's managed to make it not only into the English Open final of last year, but also into the Scottish Open. Of course, lost out on on both of those occasions, and ultimately he's off to a bad start here, as he misses red there with having no contact on it at all, and leaves the red out for Zhao Xintong. But ultimately, Zhao is going to lose the cue ball here, and will get himself into more of a problem than a benefit. And also, Zhao knows how good job lost. Well, he certainly is going to be pretty much the same there with Zhao Xintong's point of view as it was with Chomp, because even though, of course, Chomp had a nice little early lead there of 4 frames to nil, and the best that Zhao had to his name was a scoreline of 2 frames to 1, and of course was on the receiving end of things ever since. But ultimately, you know, both of the players have lost out at least 4 frames on the bounce, with Hawkins and Chomp losing 6 of those in the making, probably about the 100th time that I mentioned that today, but it is true, and doesn't often happen, at least, especially to the world number 12 and the world number 1. Let's see if it's going to be third time lucky for Yize, because he has lost out to Neil Robertson at the English Open and Li Pei Fan previously at the Scottish Open of last year. Is he going to be his story in the making this time around? Or are we going to have at least Zhao Xintong now for a couple of more of these occasions where he's got something else to say to make sure that he's going to stay in this match for a bit longer? Certainly, the safety play has to try and back that commitment up from him. And, well, on the early stage, certainly is there. Nice little shot there for him in the making. Leaves the left-hand side for Yize to try and deal with. Send the cue on towards the left-hand side of the table and try and make sure that you're not going to have any of those reds pushed towards the right-hand corner pocket out there. And every single time that Zhao Xintong plays a nice little safety, Yize just seems to take it up a level and play a brilliant safety of his own, as he has done on this occasion. And, well, you could see a little cross-double attempt there from Zhao Xintong on sending the red in towards the left corner, but has to make sure that he avoids the double kiss, which so far he hasn't managed to do on too many of those occasions. And, well, he's managed to find a brilliant gap there for himself in terms of getting the cue ball somewhat safe, but it looks like it's still not going to be enough there for him, because even though he's got the cue ball into the safe zone, he still has left a couple of reds for Yize to try and take. And the problem is going to be the aim there for the cue ball to try and get the white onto the top part of the table, because on the lower one, unless the pink is playable in towards the right corner, which I don't think it is, blue and black are out of the game. So you're going to need the ball colours for the start of this break. And decent effort there by Wu, but in the end, looks like the one that is only going to get him a single point, unless he goes for the yellow, which is still available there to his name. And a lovely little long pot once again there. You could easily make a compilation of those, especially in the second session out there, with the pure domination. I mean, you could produce a pure compilation of a whole video length there of Yize in the just 4.5 frames that have been played in the second session in the evening here at Nanjing. It does indeed go for the yellow, but whether it's going to be for the safety play, I think it is going to be for the attacking play, because he'll know better than anyone that he's got that 4 frames advantage, and he's been playing better pretty much than anyone has managed in this tournament campaign. And I mean, he's played the yellow really nicely there, got the cue ball down the table as far as he could have, but in the end still going to have to go for a little plant there in towards the right corner if he wants to send that red the easy way. He's going to have to make sure that he gets it in towards the right hand side of the pocket, which makes the pocket length limited there to him. So in the end, he decides to go for a different approach there. A red with a little bit of a stretch in towards the left corner. I mean, he's playing all those shots there, but of course the contrast is he's getting all of them right. Not quite the positional play this time around, as once again there, beautiful red in towards the left corner. Gets himself lined up with a green in towards the left middle, but just has to take all of the A-star difficulty shots now. And he has to roll this green and hopefully that just see himself and those problems once and for all. And he's still going to roll the green in, so yeah, no signs of him slowing down just yet. And the break of 7 points with, sort of 4 shots featuring that we've seen one of the hardest in the entire match there. And of course, the reward that you get for it is being 2 points ahead of your opponent. And I mean, he's not too happy with the way he's landed on the red in towards the left corner, which surely would have been the target. In the end, looks like to find a gap there in towards the right corner out there. And in the end, unless he goes for another yellow, it's going to be very unlikely out there. When he lights up, well, it's certainly just a couple of corners to go there for him in the racing terms. But You know, sometimes you never know. There may be an engine failure last second for you. And yeah, he's having a look to see if he's going to go for the blue in towards the green pocket out there. But surely it's just going to be one shot's too many for him to take. And of course, the best way to win this match in sort of this attempt is going to be not to give your chance to any opponent, Captain Obvious. But what I'm saying is, it's very nice when he's making those shots in, but a single mistake can just try and give that Zhao Xintong a little spark there that, from Yize's point of view, you don't really need to do. And which is why I think he's gone for the right shot there, just trying to send the cue ball on towards the black ball pocket and leave Zhao Xintong with the safety to play himself. And because winning lights will stay up there forever, like he can stop and basically he's around 3 or 4 laps ahead of his opponents, and he can afford to sort of let them closer to himself, but just has to make sure that he knows when to accelerate and run away off into the finish line. But this is a nice little start there from Zhao Xintong. The safety play that Yize has produced on the previous occasion clearly wasn't good enough to stop the Cyclone, and now hammers the brown in towards the green pocket. Nice little shot there by the world champion once again. And yeah, going to be very straight on this red though, which is still, right now, Zhao Xintong is going to have the issues, same issues that Yize has had previously. The black, pink and blue are still not going to be available at this stage of the frame. And he's just asked for a rest there for the referee. I thought he was going to ask to make sure that he's not going to touch any of those colours. With, you know, you almost have to make a joke about Barwick Hawkins there in the quarterfinal where, you know, he absolutely hammered the blue out of his way there with the rest. Of course, unintentionally, and gave away the frame in the next visit there to Yize. What left in tank, Zhao? Not much, I can tell you. And it's all about how many frames out there left for him. But I'm very interested to see what he's going to try and do here. Because he's clearly going to try the top. No, he's going for... What? He's going for the screw back shot on the cue ball. I mean, this is going to be interesting. Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, has he not run himself out of position completely? Or can he just about get through to the black in towards the right corner? Okay, he can. Fair play. Host was wrong. Zhao was right there. Brilliant shot there. I thought he was making the mess of position. I mean, one thing I will say, he was very close to having the pink in the way. But ultimately, that's going to change the position away nicely in his favour. And just maybe one more frame win to make the scoreline respective. With, of course, Shu Si against Chris Wakelin and Ding Jiwei against his opposition player, which, I'll be honest with you, I forgot. I think, was it Zhang Anda? Was it Zhang Anda last season? Let me have a little check there for you, because it certainly was Ding against Wakelin in the final, and it was Ding Jiwei against Shu Si, and it was Xiao Gudong against Chris Wakelin out there, and both of these semi-finals have finished either in a decider or, of course, the one of Ding Jiwei against Shu Si has finished with a scoreline of 9 frames to 6 out there. So right now, Zhao can try and match the same scoreline as he hammers the pink in towards the left corner. So now re-establishes the pink and black back on their spots out there and can try and pick up the scraps here from the positional sense. I mean, I did say not much, but he's got something left, which is a positive for the fans to see. And let's see if he's going to be able to take what's left in the tank there and use all of this fuel to get to the gas station at least, which is going to be, of course, winning 1, maybe 2 frames out there. And just put a bit more pressure there on Yize. You know, for all the criticism that I had for the Chinese world number 22 was, of course, that he wasn't really performing under pressure. But, I mean, when he was calm and himself, he was playing some absolutely extraordinary snooker out there. By far, as I say, I mean, if he managed to do the same thing in the final, he's going to overshadow that performance from Jack Lisowski from my point of view. Because it's just going to be an extraordinary campaign there for him. If he does manage to overcome that one more frame that he needs against Zhao Xintong and battle, if it's going to be Stephen Maguire or John Higgins in the final. And, well, right now, it's got the black in towards the right corner. I mean, you could argue Mark Cullen in the English Open, but I'll be a little bit biased there. And from the playing style point of view, I did enjoy watching Yize a lot more than I have from Mark Cullen's point of view. Once again, no hate, just my opinion. Nice little shot there from Zhao once again to roll the pink in towards the right middle. Gets himself 40 points clear with 51 points on the table after this red disappears. As it certainly will. And a nice little cannon there onto the two reds to make sure that both of them are going to be potable. This is more like the Zhao Xintong that we expect to see and that we have seen in the opening session out here. And of course, the ultimate thing for Zhao Xintong is going to be the fact that, you know, Yize has won 4 frames on the bounce. And if he wins 1 frame, he's going to be 25% there. If he wins 2 of those, he's going to be 50% there. And if he wins 3 on the bounce, I mean, Yize is certainly going to be nervous if he wasn't already by that stage. For now, has to focus on claiming the opening one. Rolls the pink in nicely towards the left corner. Now, 55 points is the difference with 51 on the table. So the pink was frame ball. And now just roll the red in to make sure that he's not going to be any snooker pursuit. That barring, I think it was frame number 5 out there, we haven't really seen from any of the players in the semi-final so far. But ultimately, at least there's one more frame for us to witness. And, you know, if I'm going to be a little bit biased here, I was actually going to be supportive of Zhao. But as I say, I've got absolutely no negative words there to say about Yize's performance up to this point. And even in this frame, I mean, it was a brilliant shot there from Zhao's Xintong's point of view. And of course, it was a wonderful break there, especially getting the black and pink early back on their spots there. It was very impressive for him to actually do it at the start of the frame. And ultimately, can he try and go sort of a point above there of his highest break of 82 points, which of course he achieved 11 frames ago. And technically has got enough points to produce a century on the board here. Certainly GG's out there, Kevin. 86 points is going to be the sort of points amount that he's got there. But of course, the break has started from him having 5 points already at that stage. Therefore, we're currently on the break of 81 points. And it's not going to be, unless the yellow will be fluked in towards the right middle, which he ain't going to be. It's not going to be a century on the board now. Probably doesn't deserve it, to be fair, from the performance. But it's a lot better there from Zhao Xintong's point of view. And it is now 5 frames to 8, still in favour of Yize. He's still in prime chance of claiming this semi-final. But, you know, as much as Zhao Xintong can do at this stage, he can try and survive there for as long as he possibly can. And he certainly has managed to do that on the opening occasion. Now, can we see 3 more extraordinary wins there for him to force to decide? They're probably asking too much, but at least 1 more. And then all of a sudden, he'll be game on to an extent out there, because 6-8, well, him trailing by 6 frames to 8 out there will be a different story to him trailing by 4 frames to 8. And for now, he's in between that zone. It is now Zhao Xintong 5, Yize 8, as we head into 14th frame. And of course, by the way, the odds at the end of the first session, the odds for Yize of winning by 9 frames to work were 29-1. And I only remember them because I thought there's absolutely no way that he's going to be able to win 5 frames on the bounce. And I'll be honest with you, in that intermission, I was just thinking to myself, what if he does? Just saying, you know, it would have been an absolutely extraordinary achievement once again there to do that against Trump, Hawkins, and to an extent against Zhao Xintong. 5 frames on the bounce against the world champion. I mean, it's nothing short of extraordinary, especially for the spot in the final out there of the home tournament for both of these players. And arguably, after Shanghai Masters, probably the best tournament that we've seen so far. I know that World Open and World Grand Prix is still going to be massive when it comes to that April-March stage. But until that point, as I say, barring Shanghai Masters, which wasn't in the ranking event anyway, it certainly is bigger than Wuhan Open, and I think it is certainly going to be bigger than Xi'an Grand Prix as well. But Yize doesn't seem like he's too concerned about it just yet, and I think the language that he'll be able to speak is going to be the one that we actually see of him on the table, whether he's going to be making any of those unforced errors, or he's still going to be all about business and calming himself down and understanding the fact that he's still having a very comfortable lead there, but has to make sure that he doesn't let Zhao Xintong build some sort of incredible momentum there of himself, because the most that Zhao Xintong can actually do there from his point of view is to take it 1 frame at a time. And of course, easier said than done there. But let's see if we're going to see another reaction there from the world champion, or is it going to be Yize making his third ranking event final in his career. Making that extra step there towards making history there for himself and getting that opening title just after Jack Lisowski. You never know. You know, we already had the story of Zhao, of course, making his second ranking event final in his career, doing that back-to-back Wuhan Open titles after defeating Gary Wilson in the final by 10 frames to 9. We had Zhao Yulong there challenging for his maiden ranking event win and missing out on a decider. Let's see what story are we going to have for Yize's point of view. And I mean, it's a story that is a bit the same there for Zhao Xintong, because he's gone for the red which was available there to him in towards the right corner. Not get this forward. Well, so he should be. You know, it's always one of the hardest things for you, of course, as a sportsman, whatever sport you're doing that, is to get over the line. And even when you have that gap, the closer you get to the finish line, the more struggles you're going to get. And, you know, when I was saying he's 4 laps ahead of his opponent, now he's 3 laps ahead of his opponent. And let's see if Zhao Xintong will be able to get within touching distance there of him and try and apply a bit more pressure on the compatriot. For now, Zhao Xintong will get away with an early mistake there. So just roll the cue ball in towards the bunch of reds here and force Yize to try and play away from those. As the referee signals there's no touching ball there on the red. Certainly was close, but not quite touching. And Wu has to make sure he puts the cue ball as close as he possibly can there on towards the reds here. Champion runs over the line. Well, it does. It does. Just talking about RonnieOSullivan out there, but you know, when it comes to RonnieOSullivan and the finals, of course, they're a bit of a concerning thing that would say that even though he's only lost out to the best of the game there, he's lost out to informed Jack Lisowski, informed Gary Wilson, and Neil Robertson. After, well, if you can count Karen Wilson over Invitational Shanghai Masters, but still, he's lost to the player that won the tournament in Karen Wilson in Shanghai Masters. He's lost to Saudi Arabia Masters champion in the decider. He's lost to the champion of Belfast, that was very much the man in form going into the quarterfinal stage with Barry Hawkins. As Zhao Xintong goes for a red there, which I didn't actually think was possible there for him, in towards the right middle. Clearly feels like it's now or never for him to try and deliver. And it certainly wasn't the time there for him to try and play that shot. If he was going to miss it, I think it probably was the right shot for him to play, to be fair. Because now you can see he's missed it and he hasn't actually left anything easy there for Yize, which is always a sign that it was a shot worth taking on there. Ronnie lost again against Jack. Jack didn't win. Oh, not against, yeah. So, no. The point that I was going to make against Jack Lisowski, yeah, but he still lost to a player that was sort of the most informed player. Like, he's just won his maiden ranking event title. And if you're going to tell me that sort of when you beat RonnieOSullivan, you lose the next match, that has been always the case. Especially, I mean, I know I've just mentioned Wilson has gone on to win Shanghai Masters, but if you talk about someone that has gone on with an unexpected win, well, you can think about Wilson in the Xi'an Grand Prix. He's managed to destroy O'Sullivan realistically in the quarterfinal and then comprehensively lost out to Murphy, and Murphy has lost out to Williams himself. Jack has done the same there to Barry Hawkins. Hawkins has lost 6-0 to Yize out there. Yes, Ronnie should have won a couple of strange shots in the end. If you're going to call that strange, you're a very, very respective person, Kevin, because, you know, if I didn't have the mic in front of my face right now, I would not be calling those shots strange there. I think the S shots would probably be the right thing to start, but don't think the word would be strange for me. And right now, back to the safety battle we go here. And Zhao has a look to see if he's got anything available there. Well, as I say, I mean, that brown, the beautiful brown that, you know, he tried to, when he potted the green, and it was basically a touch and ball with the brown. Why on earth would you try and get the cue ball in behind the black out there and not just play down the spine? Basically, the next shot, Lisowski snookers him and he plays the shot which was not even Maguire-esque. It was reckless X5-esque. And, of course, Lisowski has went on to clear from there. Fair play to Jack and absolutely not fair play to Ronnie. That is not the way for you to play the snooker matches. But if you very quickly, if you just finish off on Ronnie, I still think he's better than what we've seen of him last season. So I think he's going to be a challenger for the UK Championship. I think the perfect warm-up is going to be that Riyadh season in Saudi, where he's got potentially Sean Murphy and Zhao Xintong in the last 16 of the quarterfinal stage. And let's see if he's going to be very fresh. And let's also see which side of the draw he's going to be at the UK Championship, because, you know, he's the top 5 seed right now. So he's dropped out of the top 4, and also he's not going to be the reigning champion. So he's going to lose all the perks out there, but he's still going to be in contention. Yeah, looks good for the rest of the season. Well, I mean, I said the UK Championship for purpose because barring that championship, I mean, he hasn't played for 4 months last season. So he was a UK Championship loss to Barry Hawkins, and I think, of course, he wasn't playing in the Masters. And yeah, I think his next match would have been Welsh Open World Culver, and then then the World Championship sort of 5 months later out there. Not a great shot though, as he had a little bit of a change of play there from Yize and Zhao Xintong, and now Zhao Xintong has got a red available for himself in towards the left middle, so can try and aim that one towards the corner pocket with the cue ball, and he has to pull up there for the ball colours and has to accelerate for the blue. In the end, it's nicely for the blue there, to be fair. So a chance taken once again. Let's see how many points he's going to be able to accumulate over the chance though, as he rolls the blue in towards the left middle. Gets himself lined up for the red in towards the right middle this time around. And a couple of reds that look in real promising position out there. I think compromised by the black blocking the left corner for now, but shouldn't be an issue with him take the black out of the game, which I think he's going to do right now. Hammer the red. Yeah, that was always a bit of a downfall, which I didn't actually want him to do for his sake. But he was always going to sacrifice the red out there by sending the cue ball into one of them to get himself lined up for that black. But ultimately, he was a risk that he had to take on, and he didn't have another option there to his name. Now goes 14 points clear. You know, maybe it's too little to shout for the comeback is on, but I think if he manages to take this frame, all of a sudden the impossible becomes possible, at least. And the way about snooker is, it's not necessarily like football when you've got 30 minutes to try and close down a 2-0 lead. It is very much, if you take a frame out, all of a sudden, it's one less frame that you trail by. One big break, and yeah, certainly, and that's what I'm saying now. That's what he has to do. You know, the golden points of 2021 in the start of this second session has put him under all sorts of pressure. But now, can those breaks of 60, 70 points get him out of this pressure and put him into a nice little position, at least in terms of momentum there? He's not going to be in a nice position going into any part of this match now, because the best that he can hope for, and he's going to be a mighty hope, is going to be a decider, but he's still 3 frames away from that. And his main target has to be to try and make it 2 frames away from that goal. Yeah, as he rolls the brown in towards the green pocket quite nicely. 25 points away from Yize right now. And of course, very important, another thing is, when he buy a scoreline to 0, is going to be an absolute confidence breaker there from Yize, because no matter if you're RonnieOSullivan, no matter if you're Watchalong or Yize or Zhao Xintong, you're not going to be able to play that well if you have a frame that is going to finish with a scoreline to 0 to your opponent. Now, massive shot now. He's going to go for the black in towards the right corner. Needs to make it stick for the red, and he will do it. Brilliant shot there from Zhao Xintong. And he gets himself with a wide shot selection. This is game on now for this frame, certainly. Not going to say anything more than that. Roll the green in towards the middle. Have a couple of more reds that he can try and eliminate onto the top part of the table. And now, I mean, he's having all sorts of reds available to his name. 4, 5, maybe even 6 they're available right now, with him taking the previous 4 that I mentioned. Now, 39 points is the advantage. And of course, you take the 4 reds that I just mentioned there to his name, and he's going to be into a very, very nice cushion in terms of the points. So he just has to take all the complacency out of the game, put his head down, and try and grind out the result. As I say, at least the scoreline of 6 frames to 9 is going to look more respective than if you lost out on the first occasion. But of course, it's always going to be a struggle there for your opponent to get over the line, especially when you're playing against the world champion or when you're playing for the final spot. 44 points now of Zhao Xintong against Wu Yize. Hammers the red in towards the green pocket. Wants to be the right side of the blue though. Doesn't want to be straight. And he's going to be straight here. So, yeah, you can see that in the body language. He knows it better than I do. He's put himself into a bit of trouble. I mean, he needs to find some sort of angle now, or he's going to have to go for yellow. He seems to find it. Absolutely hammer the cue ball. And, yeah, couldn't find it. As I say, I think he should have gone for the yellow out there. And it's a miss. And it's a chance given away. Well, it's not quite a chance given away. But the frame is not going to be over, and it should have been. 50 points now is the advantage. 83 is on the table. It's not quite as bad as playing a reckless shot out there, but it's still not the prime Zhao Xintong that we've seen at the end of last season. Because, he just didn't have that opportunity. And if he was a robot, he didn't have any system to actually miss a shot and run himself out of position. Well, he has done that right now, and a break of 50 points. Doesn't look like it's going to be the one that actually wins him the frame. And he still leaves him vulnerable now to Wu Yize. Especially if another Chinese player is to take a full advantage here of the position. But seems to play the safety shot with a bit too much traction on the cue ball. And therefore leaves another chance away to Zhao Xintong. Another twist, great for fans. Not quite yet, but certainly it is better than if you lost out by 4 frames to 9. Than it is for him to actually try and put up a battle in the 14th frame as a potential 17. He certainly will play for this red, I can assure you of that, but if he's going to pot it, no one knows it, apart from the Snooker gods, and I think it's a positive answer there for Zhao Xintong fans, because he's managed to get this one in, not quite perfect on the black though, in towards the left corner. Yes, exciting I think you mean, and hopefully not exiting. Is from Zhao Xintong's point of view, brilliant black there in towards the left corner, and he's still in the equation now. 58 points is the gap, and certainly 75 on the table. So one more red, one more black. Well, realistically, 2 more reds they're needed, and a color of any choice. And it is going to be a scoreline that has just got pretty much twice as good there from Zhao Xintong's point of view, because he had a deficit of 4 frames, and barring those 2 shots, he's going to have a deficit of just 2 frames there to his name. Sorry, dyslexic again, right? Kevin, as I say, don't you dare apologising, especially for messaging the chat. It's only banter, and we always see the funny side of it. And as I say, I knew exactly what you meant, and the only reason why I made fun of it was to have a little bit of a laugh. Ready towards the right corner now for Zhao to make him another frame winner, and brilliant there. You can see he's playing confidently now because he absolutely hammered that red in. Didn't even wobble in the jaws, and camera straight away there going to Wu Yize's face just to make sure that, they're keeping him aware that he is losing frames now. And he, by the way, I did mention losing frames to 0 is going to be a confidence breaker there for him. And look at the scoreline, 70 points, plays 0 at this stage. Not going to be a century break here, of course, for Zhao Xintong. But ultimately, it is going to be another frame win. And of course, what a story it could have been there had he not missed those early chances there at the start of this session. These could have easily gone the distance. And let's see if it's still going to be the case out there with us having 15 frames out of potential 17. So quite close to going the distance. Wobbly, well, I wouldn't really criticise him, as I say. I think it was unfair of me criticising Zhao Xintong previously because I think it was brilliance of Wu Yize. In the end, it is now a little bit of brilliance from Zhao Xintong, as I think the crowd will certainly be on his side slightly for the simple reason of the crowd will want to see the battles to the wire. And so far, that's exactly what the players are providing them with. It is now Zhao Xintong 6, Wu Yize 8, all to play for, and the last 3 frames are coming up now. And, it was 1 frame, 2 frames ago there that Wu Yize needed. He still needs that ultimate frame, which was going to be always the hardest one. Maybe the hardest one of his career. You never know. Especially with the ways that he managed to get into those Scottish and English Open finals last season. But ultimately, he's up against the world champion. He's up against one of the favourite players here in China. And he's up against a very much informed player of Zhao Xintong. Let's see if he's got the answer to all sorts of questions now for him. One needs a chance then. We'll see. Brilliant comment once again there, Kevin. Yes. Very important from Zhao Xintong's point of view was not to give him anything easy. And therefore, if you make a player that only needs one frame and work for his chance, the chances of him actually getting that chance, pardon the pun, are going to be lower because A, he's going to be reluctant to go for something risky, and B, the pressure is just going to kick in there for him. So if it's going to be a 50-50 shot, when it's one frame that you need, maybe it's going to turn into a 40-60 shot in terms of the percentage of you actually making this one. And that's exactly the game of Zhao Xintong that has to play. I'm pretty sure you wouldn't care exactly like a word that I'm saying, and you would just be like, mate, just shut up. I want to win frames, and that's about as much as I can do. And yes, that's true. But, you know, if you want to go into analytical and the numbers point of view, I think that's something that he has to try and do. But ultimately, I don't think he will do that. And that could actually be something that he could have exploited a bit more if he was someone like Mark Selby or Mark Allen. You know, the people that want to take snooker into a game of numbers, which, as I say, if you're so good at it as Mark Selby is, 4-time world champion, one of the greatest players of his generation out there, more than welcome to do it. Not going to be welcome with fans though, and with them enjoying the more open style of play, which of course those two players have provided us with. And by the way, massive shout out to both of them. Certainly going to do that at such a stage of the match now. Thank you very much to all of you that have been watching, but also what a show they've managed to put on now. 15 frames that we're going to see, and first 14 have been absolutely incredible from the fans' point of view. As I say, I've got a little bit of a bias thing here, with Zhao Xintong being quite a player that I actually quite like there in terms of his style and just the way he plays the game. But I certainly have got nothing against Yize out there. So what a match it has been, and it's not quite over just yet, as it is, you know, last time I mentioned, of course, it was 13 frame, where I said, is it going to be the last time Zhao Xintong is going to break off? Well, I mean, the next time he's going to try and go for a break-off shot, he's going to be a decider. So that's going to be a milestone for him to try and look forward to. Yes, great semi. I mean, Stephen Maguire and John Higgins have got quite a benchmark to try and sort of beat this performance from the two of them. It is certainly going to be youth against experience in the final. And it is also going to be touch and ball now for Zhao Xintong after a safety being played from Yize's point of view. And now Zhao will just try and play the cue ball away from those two reds and try and get it maybe in behind one of those ball colours, or just maybe send the cue ball as close in towards the ball cushion as is possible. Still, from the psychological point of view, can't really see any reaction from Yize's point of view, but I think the reaction will be there. I just don't think you can see with a naked eye out there, simply for the reason of he's going to try and hide it to make sure he doesn't show it there to Zhao Xintong, because one of his strengths out there, Xintong, is to be able to pounce back on any sort of negativity there that your opponent has. And I mean, that's the real sign. I mean, Zhao Xintong probably didn't see that, but I certainly did. Yize was absolutely fuming with himself. He basically was standing and couldn't believe the way that he's played the shot, and he's left the red now for Zhao Xintong in towards the left corner. But remember, Zhao has to be perfect in all of those shots and has to get himself on the collar every single time of asking. He managed to get the red in. Now, has he got lucky? And is he going to be on this pink? No reaction there for him at all. No hand of apology or anything. But he's approaching the shot in the way that he's going to take it on there. Once again, massive shot there for him because of the way the reds are spread out. And he makes it stick. Well, another chance. Another frame, another chance there for Zhao Xintong. And you know, all of those chances are just going to accumulate there, and maybe it's just going to become a bit too many of them for Yize's point of view. Now plays the red in towards the left middle, which is going to be the aim there after the referee managed to sort of re-establish the ping back on his spot there, which, of course, is a minor blow there to Zhao Xintong's thing, because, I mean, he would have absolutely loved the ping to go back on the black spot, which is currently vacant, because that would have put him in a prime chance there of taking this frame. If Zhao wins this frame, he goes favourite. Ooh. Apologies for that. And got something to sort out here. Let me know if... Kevin, please let me know if the stream is buffering, because I just got a message that it has disconnected out there for me. So hopefully the connection has gone smoothly. And the break hasn't gone smoothly, though, for Zhao Xintong, because it was always going to be no colours there for him to try and land on the lower part of the table. Still on, thank you. Appreciate that. Hate to be that person, but thank you. And yeah, back to Yize it goes. Basically, the black is on the black spot, on the black cushion right now, and is nowhere near the possible position. So realistically, Zhao Xintong would have liked to see the cue ball landed on that pink and towards the black spot and try and build the break around that position. Didn't manage to do it, and ultimately it's a wonderful safety shot there by Yize. And Zhao Xintong certainly is going to ask the referee to have a look at this position, because it's a wonderful safety shot there. I don't know where Yize managed to get that shot from, but he could put Zhao Xintong into all sorts of trouble out there. Is he going to be able to get away from it? Not quite. And the first real chance there for Yize, since he managed to get himself on that chance. Sorry, not on that chance. On that 8-4 frame advantage. Realistically, that's the first real one that he's going to get to his name. He missed the red towards the right middle previously. And ultimately, this is the first real chance that he's going to get of himself. And he's going to get 2 reds in one shot, you would think. Which is always a nice little thing there for you in terms of the log-based stuff. And he's going to get himself a perfect position on the black. But I will say, I was going to say that before he potted the red, but I was going to disagree with you anyway, because as long as you have a frame advantage, I still think Yize is going to be the favourite, because you said that if Zhao Xintong wins this frame, he's going to become the favourite. Not for me, because that is the advantage and that is the luxury of when you are 4 frames ahead there of your opponent, you can afford to lose 4 of them. I've seen that before, and I've seen it on all levels of snooker. I've seen, I think it was Chang Pinfei against RonnieOSullivan, and basically Pinfei was 5-0 up there on Ronnie, and yes, momentum, absolutely, but just, yeah, Ronnie was 5-0 down. He managed to get it back level, and in the last frame, he got absolutely no chance. He had one shot, which I think was the shot after the break-off, and after that, Tang Pinfei gone for a brilliant long red, potted it, and made a 100+ clearance, and Ronnie couldn't do anything about it. But that's the luxury that you got when you have that frame, when you've got those extra frames on you, and that's why Zhao Xintong couldn't afford to go 4-8 down. He couldn't really go 4-7 down to start with, but ultimately, these are the chances that Yize has to try and make sure he's going to take. If he is to become at least the runner-up here, of course, guarantee himself a 75,000 worth of prize money in pound sterlings for the final, and still battle for 175,000 here. So I'm pretty sure I'm right in saying that it's going to be second highest of the ranking events this season after Saudi Arabian Masters. But absolutely get your points. But until we get to that stage, as I say, it's still a massive frame now to win, and I'll be honest with you, apart from the pressure, I can't really see anything stopping Yize, because right now he hasn't got too many reds in the way, so they're not going to be in the way of each other. 9 reds now on the table, and all 9 of them in perfect positions. The only problem is that the black is currently sitting on the blue spot, but I mean, he's getting the maximum amount of points of this position, and when he gets down the lower part of the table, he's going to be able to eliminate those couple of reds, put the black exactly where he belongs, and get himself in and around the black spot. But very, very smart short selection there for him. He tries to eliminate the reds that are closer to that blue spot, and they're sort of in between there, being on the pink line and above the pink, but lower than the blue. And just easy. If he goes down the table, step by step there, and just takes those reds out one by one, big for work, getting work, well, that's your chance, and it's about as good as he's ever going to get for you, because realistically, there's 2 reds that are going to be a minor difficulty, with them being in open play, but in the way of each other. Apart from that, as I say, not going to have any more issues to his name. Now having 28 points of a gap, and it says 29 there on the table, but same amount of reds as them, so not going to change that one too much. See if it's going to play any sort of difference in the end of it, and hammers the red in towards the right corner, and ultimately he's going to eliminate the blue now, which, don't worry, it's not going to matter for him too much. He's just going to be put on the brown spot, with the brown spot being the last one of the spots currently free. So just eliminate the blue to make sure he's not going to be compromised on the black by any stretch. And have that extra angle to try and send the cue ball down the table. Maybe this is going to be the chance there for him to actually free up the black spot. And make sure he's going to be nicely away there. On for the next shot, but doesn't want to be straight on it. And I think he is straight. Therefore, probably has to go for the red, which is going to be having a tougher angle there for himself. And, well, these are the shots that make you the winner or loser. Let's see which is going to be now for Wu. I still think he'll make it, but he has to play with a lot of power. Therefore, makes the shot missable. Ooh, boy, did he play that with power. He's actually overplayed it with power. I mean, brilliant shot there because he's still going to have the yellow. And one thing about it, especially if he doesn't mess up the break for at least 3 or 4 more shots. Now 48 points, plays 8 there. So 40 points advantage. Referee just making sure that none of the fans are going to capture this maybe iconic moment on the smartphones. And maybe some of them have just been reluctant to do it. Because Yize, by the way, I mean, I love the composure from the player. I mean, he hasn't looked once there towards the part of the stand. I mean, the referee literally was with the hand gestures, obviously watching with no audio, but he's been really heavily involved there with an argument with someone. And Yize is just looking at the perfect angle for the red, which he's played absolutely perfectly. Gets himself on the top side of the black, which was on the blue spot, and will remain there for a couple of more shots. But ultimately, the pack of 2 reds that I mentioned previously, which was in open play, has just got into a better position there for himself. So now, 48 points is the advantage. It's going to be 51 on the table after this red. So one more colour is all Yize needs. And what a performance it has been. And massive shout out, by the way, to Zhao Xintong. If it is to be the end there for him, he certainly has played his part in this tournament. And that's the starting point. If I said I was impressed by RonnieOSullivan's playing style, I certainly think that, you know, Zhao Xintong with a bit more, maybe focus, a bit more sort of practice there. And a bit more form there for his game. He's going to be able to come back even stronger. But, I mean, this one is not over quite yet. Well, will you believe it? Happy. Well, let's see. As I said, he was having a straightforward path there on towards the match ball. Right now, he needs this black to roll in towards the left middle, but could have been easier. Match ball is missable. But it's not missable for Yize, and he is going to go 2 snookers clear straight away. No emotions whatsoever on Zhao Xintong's face, but he will be absolutely dying inside. Well, I would be. As I say, I know he's on face on pressure, but he certainly will be very disappointed in losing. And now 56 points is the advantage, so 2 snookers needed for Zhao Xintong to be back in the equation for this frame, but ultimately, Yize has done all the hard work. Of course, Xintong will come back to the table, but you can feel like, with the scoreline being the way it is for Wu, it is going to be a bit of a just desperation play there for him. Has to go for this red now in towards the left corner. Has to make it stick and has to do it right here, right now. Went for it, missed it, and it could be the last shot of his campaign. Depends on where the red is going to finish. And it's going to finish in a position that is playable for Yize, but it's a very difficult shot there for actually to get this one in. GG's, yeah, I'll stick to that. I'll probably say it is GG's. 2 snookers and 2 more frames. I just think it's mission impossible there for Zhao Xintong, but I'll also stick to the fact that it's never over until it actually is over. Seeing those frames won out there. But this could all be behind now if Yize manages to take this red, which he isn't going to do. And let's see if the same red is going to be playable there by Zhao Xintong. Of course, he needs to play all of those reds with high value colours. I think he can afford to go for the pink, with him needing 2 snookers anyway. Or maybe a snooker and a free ball. Right now, having a look to see if he's going to be able to get himself onto the black from this shot. I think he will attempt it if there's a chance that he actually makes this red. Hammered it in and missed it. And is the cue ball going to drop in? It's going to be close, and it is going to drop in. So now, it makes it 3 snookers, and I mean, the same red isn't going to be possible, but if 2 snookers was enough there at that time, it is going to be too many snookers there for Zhao Xintong right now, you'd feel. 60 points is the advantage, 51 on the table. And at least, I mean, unless it's going to be a free ball on the red, it is going to be curtains. For Zhao Xintong's point of view, and Yize just has to make sure he's going to be calm now. just not try and run away with it too soon, because you can't get snookers, or you're very unlikely to get snookers when you've got 3 reds in open play. So therefore, Xintong has to go for at least a couple of them. And he's gone for the first one. And if the cue ball's going to drop in, and he's going to stop it, and that is Yize making it into the final. And what a performance it has been, and what a story it has been for the Chinese world number 22. The crowd are on their feet. The world champion is out, but the rising star is certainly into the final there of the international championship, and no reaction there whatsoever there, and it certainly is a positive sign there. The man seems to be reluctant to pressure, and he had a difficult break to try and make his way through. The chance was there, and in the end, he only needed it once there. He'll come back onto the arena on Sunday, and as he waves the finger to his fans, he certainly would have enjoyed that himself. What a performance, and what a story for Yize. Well done, Wood. Great covering. Thanks to you. Kevin, thank you very much for your contribution, and everyone, of course, that has been watching. Appreciate that. And yeah, feel free to tune in for the next semi-final tomorrow of Stephen Maguire against John Higgins. And don't miss the final. We already know one of the finalists there. It is going to be Yize, the man from China. He's, for the 3rd time in a row, of course, we're going to have the Chinese player, at least one of them, represented in the tournament. And we all know what happened in 2024 and 2023 with Zhang Anda and Ding Zhuyi winning those tournaments, being, of course, the home players from China. Let's see if it's going to be 3 on the bounce there for the China crew. And ultimately, let's go through a little bit of an overview, and where has it gone wrong there for Xintong, and has it gone too well there for Yize at the start of the second session? Well, I mean, it's going to be a pretty short overview there, because it was 4 frames very similar that were won there by Yize since the start of the session. But ultimately, you have to say the first one was probably the most painful from Xintong's point of view, because he was playing really well. He had a beautiful chance there to close off the frame with a real chance there, and he had a clearance once again, just like it was in the 8th frame, where it was 58 points of a gap there in favor of Yize, 83 on the table. Very similar scenario in frame number 9, where it was 56 points of a gap and still 83 on the table. Xintong managed to get through all the hard work, got himself into the last 4 colors that were on the table, and still made the mess of that at that time. So he was a straightforward clearance there from Yize's point of view, but you feel like that's where the damage was done there to Xintong, because frame number 10, frame number 11, and frame number 12 have all been in very similar fashion there for him, making one mistake, and Xintong being punished for his mistake. Yize has been flawless in those frames. Maguire and Higgins' game on certainly is. On the 13-14 frame, you felt like there was a little bit of a resurrection there from Xintong, but I'll be honest, in hindsight, I always felt like it was too late there for the resurrection, because unless you're a true experienced champion and you go against someone that is very inexperienced and hasn't been at this stage before, which is not going to be true against Yize, who just made his 3rd ranking event final in his career, but also just doesn't seem to be the player that is actually affected by the pressure. It was always going to be too much of a margin there for Xintong to try and close off. He could have won 2 frames, maybe even 3 frames, but could never realistically see him winning 5 frames with the bounce, which was the task there for him, with being 8-4 down. In the end, it was a wonderful frame, and it was a single chance that Yize was able to take. And now we've got a scoreline of 9 frames to 6. And what a story we've got now. Is it going to be John Higgins or Stephen Maguire up against Yize? Well, for future tune in to find out tomorrow. But for now, thank you very much for watching. Appreciate every single one of you for all the likes, for all the contributions, and just for the watch time that you've contributed to the stream. Feel free to tune in tomorrow, and we will be back with more snooker action, as November is going to be one of the busiest months there for you. Champion of Champions, Riyadh season, and the first Triple Crown events are all to follow after we finish with the business end of the tournament. Speak to you soon, take care, and thanks for watching.